I used to always put other people above myself, and I used to tell myself that it was because I was selfless and I cared about the people in my life, when in reality it was because I did not understand how important it was to actually put myself first. But thankfully I started to learn that there really is an art to putting yourself first that I had to master, and when I started to do that, my mentality towards everything pretty much changed. There is an art to putting yourself first that I don't think we really take the time to master, let alone just appreciate the fact that it exists. And this is why we end up talking to people that we don't want to talk to, or end up going to places that we don't want to go to, or just saying yes to things that we really want to say no to. But the second that you actually master those emotions that you feel when you put yourself first, and I'm going to explain those emotions in a little bit, but the second that you start doing that, you start to take your life to a completely different level. And you'll notice yourself dedicating all of that time to you, all that energy goes back to you, and then life just all of a sudden seems a lot more purposeful. In order to put myself first, I had to realize that there is a distinction between being rude, being dismissive, or being selfish versus actually focusing on yourself or putting yourself first. And I think it's really important to preface this video with that specifically, so we can really just draw the line between what it looks like to be a jerk and what it looks like to actually focus on yourself. Being oblivious to how important it was to put myself first has definitely cost me a lot, and I feel like the most notable example of this is my last relationship. And this is not a shot at her by any means, she's an amazing person, but I definitely did not put myself first in that relationship. And when it comes to relationships with other people, it's really challenging to understand when you need to be selfless and when you need to be selfish. But I feel like everybody knows their limit, everybody knows when it gets to a point. And for me, it definitely got to my point, it definitely got to my limit, and I still chose not to put myself first because I didn't want to be an emotional burden to anybody. I didn't want to put anybody in an uncomfortable situation, so I started to hold on to those things, hold on to those feelings and those emotions, and just kind of let it linger in so somebody else can have a better time. And there were a lot of things that I feel like I could have prevented personally had I just put myself first, had I just thought about what was going to bring me peace instead of focusing on how to make another person happy. And relationships in any context are always going to be an extreme example, but I feel like we need those extreme examples because it helps us manage the minor examples a little bit better. But even minor things like saying yes when I wanted to say no, saying yes when I knew it was going to put me in a bad mood or put me in a bad position, those things affect me just as much. Like, I remember one time last semester, I was having a very low energy day, and anybody that knows me in real life knows that I can lose my social battery very quickly. I get very drained easily. So I was having one of those days where I just wanted to be alone, talk to myself, enjoy my food without talking to anybody. So I go to the dining hall and then I see somebody come. I know this guy's a talker. I really don't want him to sit next to me, but he sits next to me anyway. And me just knowing myself and knowing the kind of mood that this was going to most likely put me in, I should have just put myself first and been honest and said, hey man, in the nicest way possible, I'm not trying to talk right now, we can talk a different time, I'm sorry. But instead of putting myself first, I was people pleasing, and then I found myself in a small talk conversation. And anybody that knows me in real life also knows that I hate small talk. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves. So to cap off a pretty bad day, I didn't put myself first, and I felt the consequences of doing that. The reason that I put all of these things above me, whether that be my last relationship, friends, or even just this person sitting next to me when I wanted to be alone, the reason that I put all of these things above me is because I thought that it would be selfish if I didn't put these people first. I thought that it would be selfish if I put myself first instead of thinking about how they were going to be impacted. Because the first thought that would run to my brain would always be, how is this going to impact them? Or imagine how it's going to affect them. And so thinking about that, I just put them first instead of thinking about myself, which to an extent, that's not a terrible trait. But it also gets to a point. There is a time to be selfish and a time to be selfless, and the issue is that a lot of us cannot differentiate when to use what. The first thought is always going to be, imagine how it's going to affect them, imagine how it's going to impact them. But then I started to flip the script and I started to question, would they ever think about me in that way? Would they ever question how it's going to impact me if they do something like this, or how it's going to affect me if they do this or that? And no, that's not me stooping down to their level. I would actually argue that that's me rising to their level of understanding and that level of confidence that if this person doesn't want something, they're going to say that. Because at the end of the day, closed mouths do not get fed. That person that sat next to me, he had a level of confidence with himself to know that if I didn't speak up for myself, if I didn't establish those boundaries, then he's not doing anything wrong because he's doing what he was taught to do. He's taught to be charismatic, he's taught to speak to people, he's taught to be social on a college campus. That's just what he knows, that's what he's taught, so I cannot blame him for any of that. It was never his responsibility to get me to speak up and be outward about my opinions or outward about how I'm feeling or what I wanted from that day. It's nobody else's responsibility to put you first, it's only your responsibility. The reason that we think it's such a bad thing to speak out and put ourselves first is the exact reason why these people are a lot more emotionally mature than we are. Because a lot of us just think that our emotional maturity lies in our ability to tolerate, when in reality, it actually lies in our ability to understand what is and what isn't going to bring us peace. In order to be able to have these healthy relationships where you can be selfless, you need to be able to manage your emotions at a better level and understand when you need to put yourself first and prioritize your own peace and your own emotions instead of thinking about somebody else all the time. And to start putting myself first, there were 3 things specifically that I focused on. And those 3 things are: I stopped over-explaining when I said no, I let people be uncomfortable with my growth, and I stopped apologizing for peace. And I'm going to explain all of these things in detail. Stop over-explaining yourself. The shortest sentence that you could say in the English language is no. You don't need a no because I blah blah blah, or no I can't because blah 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 blah. You don't need that. They don't need it. You don't need it. Nobody needs the yap. Nobody needs you constantly explaining why you can't do something. Now, of course, if it makes sense to explain, then explain. But don't over-explain. Nobody needs you over-explaining anything just to make you feel better about the fact that you said no. Because you're not sorry at all that you said no. You're sorry because you feel guilty or you feel selfish by saying no, which, by the way, you're not. And obviously, all of this stuff is situational. If somebody's on the train tracks begging you to help them up, I pray to God that you don't say no to them. But for the things in your life that are getting to a point, or the things in your life that are clearly doing you a disservice, it is okay to say no, and you do not have to over-explain exactly why you're saying no. The second thing is to let people be uncomfortable. Your growth is meant to be uncomfortable for the people around you, and I feel like we have such a negative connotation with that word, uncomfortable. But if something is changing, if something is becoming unfamiliar to you, you're going to be uncomfortable, and we need to start allowing people that space to be uncomfortable without having to overanalyze or over-explain or overthink all of these certain things. You are changing into a person different than who you were, and that's going to lead to discomfort. You need to start accepting the fact that people are going to be uncomfortable. People aren't going to be familiar with the person that you were. For example, when you exercise, your muscles start to strain, they start to tear, and they feel really uncomfortable. But they don't look you in the face and say, I don't like this, goodbye. Nah, they're going to adjust. That's how you get stronger. The people in your life are going to do the exact same thing. They're going to start adjusting to the new you, and you have to be patient and allow that process to happen. And the third thing is kind of a combination of the two, but stop apologizing for your peace. When you apologize for something like setting a boundary or putting yourself first, it's sending a message to yourself that you're putting that person's needs above your own. And if internally you're not respecting your decisions, you're not respecting your boundaries, what makes you think that anybody else is going to respect if you put yourself first? They're simply not going to. So every single time you start apologizing for setting your boundaries or apologizing for putting yourself first, you're sending a message not only to that other person that, hey, this boundary actually isn't that important and I'm sorry that I inconvenienced you by any means, but you're also sending a message to yourself saying, hey, this boundary that I just set isn't even really real to me because I'm apologizing for it. These 3 things, among the other topics that I talk about on this channel, are so important to understanding how to master that art of putting yourself first. But I've noticed that with myself, finding confidence in understanding my boundaries and finding confidence in actually establishing those boundaries come easier when I actually understand exactly who I am and what I want to say and what the boundaries that I want to have established actually are. And if you want an easier way to put yourself first and an easier way to start establishing your boundaries, I would definitely recommend my self-growth journal. There are self-growth prompts that help you understand and guide you to understanding how to focus on yourself and how to put yourself first entirely. If you're interested in that, the link is in the description below. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that somebody got some value out of it. But yeah, thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.